So now, to tie a bow around this morning, please welcome Andrew Breitbart.
Hello. 7 o'clock in the morning, somebody gets fired, or else I don't speak for AFP again. Just kidding. I actually got Eric fired. I'm sorry about that. I don't know if you saw this before this entire event started, but one of the perils of being in this movement is that the women treat me like meat. I am not a sexual object. I want you to know that. That's why I bring Brandon here. Sorry about that. I'm going to use a metaphor here that isn't always a metaphor, and that's I'm at war. And I think you can see that Anita is as well, and so is Brandon Darby, and clearly everybody in this room wouldn't have gotten up at 7 o'clock in the morning if we too weren't at war against some pretty nasty forces. And I can't, if Brandon and Anita had not spoken, that would have been selectively edited and put on the internet, and Andrew says that he's at war, and they would have gone to war against me. But you understand what's going on here. I mean, we're talking about some people that would like to take over this country and turn it into something nobody could possibly imagine it to be. But the closest analogy is what Brandon experienced down in New Orleans, and that's anarchy, chaos, and disorder with people who don't even know what they believe in. They just like the romance of taking on good and decent middle-class citizens. And look at what they've done to go after everybody in this room. I mean, this is just middle-class America, and they claim to speak on behalf of middle-class America, yet they've chosen to rhetorically and beyond go to war against middle-class America. After 8 years of this so-called peace movement being granted so much leeway to do whatever the hell it wanted to do by the mainstream media, remember the bumper stickers in your Whole Foods parking lot, dissent is patriotic? You remember there was nothing that somebody on the far left could do at an anti-war rally. There was no burning of Bush. There was no portraying him as a monkey. There was no condemnation of uses of Nazi symbols. In fact, when CNN would go out there, they would have smiles on their face in the middle of the crowd with the Nazi stuff and saying, hey, this is just the 60s all over again. Isn't this great? Come on down. The more the merrier. Dissent is patriotic, dissent is patriotic, dissent is patriotic. They kept saying it over and over. And so, and I'm saying this as a recovering Republican, we took a beating in 2008 because of the power of media and the power of propaganda. And the period in between November of 2008 and 2009 was a period of what I saw the Republican Party acquiescing to the ascendancy of this group. And we knew what it was. We knew that it was people who represent the margins of political society, the far left, dressing up in a form of cosmic moderation that it doesn't even reflect the reality. That's why they needed to make sure that nobody knew about Valerie Jarrett or Bill Ayers or Reverend Wright, because they knew that they had to put an Oprah Winfrey smiley face on this thing. And the Republican Party allowed for it to happen. They never fought back. In fact, In fact, they pushed a candidate whose sole virtue, other than his obvious war hero status, of which we all praise him, was that he acquiesced and embraced the mainstream media. And we said, oh, he's going to be the one that they're going to like. And I hope he learned a lesson, because they turned on him. And the way that they turned on him was in the most sexist way, is they turned on Sarah Palin, and they decided that all of the rules that we had learned about keeping the children at bay, you don't go after the kids. The mainstream media saw this woman bring a spark of life into a moribund campaign. She showed up at rallies, a vice presidential candidate, in the age of the columns, at Invesco. She'd go to a town of 20,000 people and 50,000 would show up. And this thing came out of nowhere. And they freaked out. And the people that were protecting and coddling Barack Obama, who thought that it was untoward to vet a half-term community organizer from Acorn, decided that it was going to go into the womb of Sarah Palin and thrash around until it found what it wanted to find, and when it didn't find what it was going to find, it was just going to report it, and it didn't matter. And I started to get really pissed off. And I watched as people that I admired, and I can understand it, it's scary out there. It takes courage to stand up to these bullies on the playground. But I saw people that were on the stage last night doing everything they could to accommodate this evil, and nobody stood up against it. If it's not going to be Sarah Palin, it's going to be you next time. Why not defend her? Instead, I saw something that, it's symbols. I mean, I'm shallow. I'm from LA, okay? I can't help it. I live in a world of shallow symbols. And I saw Newt Gingrich, after the election, somebody I admire immensely, sit down with Nancy Pelosi and work on a global warming initiative. And I was like, that's going to be our response to the election of a radical leftist, is let's see how we can work together on their wealth redistribution scheming and trying to devalue American sovereignty and the American superpower status. It just didn't bode well. I was like, this doesn't look right to me. So I decided to create a series of websites, the big sites, right about then, and I said, I want to be the other voice. And this isn't just another voice in the sense that I wanted to counter the New York Times and ABC, CBS, and NBC and Politico and all the mainstream establishment left of center media. I wanted to go against the Republican establishment that would think that it could get along with pure evil.